This is historian Stephen DiGiuffre. I'm here at Sagamore Hill overlooking Long Island Sound in the town of Oyster Bay, Long Island. It is the early evening. I've just given my talk for the Gold Coast Book Fair. And I was here earlier today, but I decided to come back here and record a short video. Last week, I was at another president's house. I was at the John Adams homestead in Quincy, Massachusetts. And that was a home built in the 1780s and lived in by the Adams family until the 1920s. This home, Sagamore Hill, is a home that was built first and foremost as a family home. It was built by Theodore Roosevelt and his wife, Alice Hathaway Lee Roosevelt, in the early 1880s. And it was originally to be called Lee Home after his wife's maiden name. Alice Roosevelt tragically died at the age of 22, soon after giving birth to their daughter, also named Alice. She died of Brice disease. That same day at the townhouse in New York, the Roosevelts owned, Theodore Roosevelt's own mother died. So I can imagine as being in his shoes as a young man full of promise and as a rising star of the New York State Assembly and Republican politics, all of a sudden losing the two women he was closest to. And he spent some time away. He was in the Dakota Badlands where he used some of his inheritance to buy a ranch. Unfortunately, that ranch went bust. But he had enough money to complete this house, and eventually he married his childhood sweetheart, Edith Carew. And Edith Carew Roosevelt ended up moving into this house with him, and they had five more children together. And this house was built by the architects Lamb and Rich in the Queen Anne style. And Theodore Roosevelt was someone who came from a very prominent family. His grandfather was one of the richest men in New York, Cornelius Van Schack Roosevelt. But Roosevelt was brought up to be very skeptical of overt luxury, and the house shows this. And when he was president, Theodore Roosevelt would attack the tycoons who made their fortune in Gilded Age industry as malefactors of great wealth. And this house was a sort of statement against the overly mannered grandeur of the cottages of Newport or the mansions on Fifth Avenue, the big French chateaus. And this was a home that was a place where he worked and wrote. In addition to being a politician, he was a very, very prolific writer. He had over 10,000 books in his house, but it was also a house where kids were allowed to run around and have fun. Of course, there was a lot of nice stuff in this house, stuff that he had collected as president, gifts from foreign dignitaries. He had a lot of treasures from Japan. Theodore Roosevelt was a avowed Nippanophile. He practiced jujitsu and had great respect for Japanese culture. But many, many famous people visited here. Many politicians visited here. This was the summer White House. But this is also the place where Roosevelt's children did these point-to-point races with their father across the property. They could go over, under, or through an object, but never around. But Theodore Roosevelt was an interesting parent because in the Victorian era, especially among people of his class, children were to be seen and not heard, and were raised by governesses, and often were kept at arm's length from their parents. Theodore Roosevelt was someone who loved playing with his children, playing sports with them, and wrestling with them on the ground and reading the books. He was a hands-on parent, and this was a place first and foremost for family, not like a lot of the other houses of its type. Now, Theodore Roosevelt lived in this house until his death in 1919. He was only 60 years old. His wife, Edith Roosevelt, lived here until the 1940s when she died. And eventually in the 1960s, the property was given over to the public to be turned into a museum. Now, Theodore Roosevelt is someone who has a lot of very, very admirable qualities. He came from wealth, but he always worked extraordinarily hard, whether it was writing or politics. He liked to make fun of people he called the people who stood on the sidelines and were just the critics, who judged and cackled from afar at the people who try and fail and fall on their face and get off the ground and try again. He gave a famous speech called "The Man in the Arena," which is something he uh, deeply believed in doing. And at the same time, he had many prejudices of the people of his class. One of his best friends was the Senator Henry Cabot Lodge of Massachusetts, who was a paradox in many ways. He was another patrician. And as a Republican senator, he was a very vocal proponent of equal rights for African Americans, but he was virulently anti immigrant and was one of the key members of the Immigration Restriction League, which lobbied for quotas based on ethnic origin. And Theodore Roosevelt and him did have a very close friendship. And as he grew older, especially after during World War One, he began adopting more sort of hardline stances like this publicly. At the same time, Theodore Roosevelt did hire the first Jewish cabinet official in his administration, Oscar Strauss, who was the brother of Macy's co-owners Isidor Strauss and Nathan Strauss. So he did socialize with German Jews of that class. But I think at the end of the day, Theodore Roosevelt, you have to give him a lot of credit for someone who never took the easy way out. He put himself at great risk going on this expedition in the Amazon to chart this unknown river. He went with his son Kermit, and both of them nearly die. And Theodore Roosevelt, in fact, never recovers from uh, this uh, this adventure. He eventually dies of his old wounds from his leg in 1919 from an embolism. And I think he was someone who never did stop trying. And he was always present for his children. And I think that's something that we do need to take away in this time of leaders. I think that it's very easy to look for saints and sinners in this very scary time. And Theodore Roosevelt, like so many leaders, so many truly brilliant men, had a lot of dark spots. But at the end of the day, he was a producer. He loved his family, loved his country. And yes, he had a huge love of publicity. I think Theodore Roosevelt would have loved TikTok and social media. He loved the press. I mean, I think he was very modern. He was the first modern president who used celebrity and star power and is skillfully used the press to get his agenda through. But I think here at Oyster Bay, overlooking the sound here at this place he loved, and soon before he died, he did say, I cannot tell you how much I love Sagamore Hill." This is a man who traveled the world and consorted with princes and leaders, but this was his home. This is where he was grounded, and this is where he loved his family. This is historian Stephen Ujifusa. Thank you for listening.